for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Howard, is it fair to say that the NEPA review process is very costly? As a general rule?
Yeah, for large projects, many millions of dollars, not counting the time.
And with that, obviously, it's also time-consuming.
Yes.
Would you also agree, and others of you as well, that many of you have mentioned that, in essence, this becomes a magnet for litigation? Would you agree?
For many large projects, yes.
It's just set up for that. Others of you agree basically with this. Mr. Bridges, you mentioned earlier about many people coming from, and others did as well, coming from not the local area, but from extended areas, particularly for the Millennium Bulk Terminal project, as you experienced with that. In the process of those individuals coming, would you say that at least portions of the project were hijacked by those individuals for their political agenda, whatever that may have been?
That's what it seemed like to us. It seemed to be more based on the particular, commodity or whatever, instead of actually looking at using the process to look at how it really impacts the state and the area. So.
That's the impression I got. That's why I'm using that. Mr. Wilcox, would you say as well that that is frequently a reality?
It definitely exists. I don't know if it's frequently, but there definitely is some of that. We had comments come from Germany and Europe on prairie dogs in northern Converse County that the agency must consider and look at. That seems to be a time sink to me, that the agency's time could be better spent. We've talked about staffing. Why review comments from foreign countries on prairie dogs? Seems not the best use of resources.
Not exactly local. All right, so GOA has said we're looking at an average of 4.5 years. Mr. Howard, I think you said 4.6. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
All right, so somewhere in that process. So this is, in any way you look at it, a cumbersome process. Not exactly the intent of Congress originally in 1970.
Early environmental impact statements were dozens of pages long, and the regs say that even in the largest projects, they should never be more than 300 pages.
Would you say that the public comment, your view is that those ought to come earlier in the process, with them coming as they currently are? Is that detrimental?
Yes, I think there should be informal and perhaps some formal public process before the environmental review is done to talk about the project and get the public's concerns. It's really important to get public input. After the project is done, and you've got a multi-thousand-page report today, you end up having this thing that often does resemble a circus, and people are just justifying their decisions.
And at that point of having public opinion, it creates more problems. I mean, the way it is.
And it creates many problems. Sometimes some good comes of it, but not nearly as much as if you do it earlier.
All right, Mr. Bridges, with you on the public input part of things, your experience in both observing and participating in all of this, what have you observed with the public input?
Well, I think I mentioned this earlier. It seemed to be that, because the way the process works and people get involved later on after the EIS, draft EIS is out, and it's so publicized. It's in the paper. It's advertised, so it allows these groups, the coalitions, to get together, and I think it prohibits the people in the public that really want to participate, because they don't want to have to pick a side. They want to go and do what Ms. Baer talked about, and talk about what they want to see in mitigation or their real concerns, not be part of the sideshow. So
in your experience right now, the public input part as it currently exists, is it detrimental to the overall project?
I think so, yeah. It just adds stuff, drama that doesn't need to be there, instead of dealing with the real facts of the project.
All right, so with the Millennium Bulk Terminal project, for example, how is the public input part being detrimental?
I guess because there really isn't any limitation, and like I said, it discourages people that would participate to stay on the sidelines, and it just leaves it to the proponents and the people that are fighting. So there's no, it doesn't seem to be a middle ground of like what Ms. Bear was describing in some of the transportation projects. That's where I would like to see things be, is where we're working together to try to get this stuff done. But
And
it's
I'll
right now
yield
it's-
back, but you say it's detrimental to the project itself as well. I just want for clarification.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman,